Do you know what, lads? I've just read through the entire transcript of Jordan Henderson's interview with The Athletic, and you've got to hand it to the man. Because pretty much every word that came out of his mouth was absolute fucking horseshit. I mean, Christ almighty, he didn't even attempt to come across as genuine, and that takes a certain level of shamelessness that most of us can only dream of achieving. In case you have no idea what I'm talking about, Jordan Henderson basically sat down with a couple of journalists to discuss his controversial decision to join Saudi Pro League side Al-Ettifaq. While there's been a plethora of players making the move over to the Gulf, what sets Henderson apart from his peers is that he's been one of the most outspoken LGBT allies across English football, yet has agreed to ply his trade in a country that criminalizes homosexuality. Needless to say, those within the aforementioned community feel let down by Henderson, and I reckon they're only going to be more disappointed once they hear his take on the entire ordeal. Initially, he listed all the good he's done as Liverpool captain, from wearing rainbow armbands and laces to preparing marketing material for matchday programs during Pride Month, which I do believe he deserves credit for. However, that also happens to be the crux of the issue. You can't begrudge a footballer for heading over to the Middle East for a big bag of cash. After all, it's a very short career and, whether we like it or not, a job. And thus individuals are likely to choose the most financially lucrative path they can. Although I do reckon it makes more sense to do that in your mid to late 30s as opposed to the prime of your career, but each to their own. In regards to Henderson himself, no one asked him to become a spokesman for gay rights. He chose to do that completely on his own accord, and thus shouldn't be surprised to see backlash come his way. Had he not done so, no one would have batted an eyelid here. So he's basically dug his own grave. Don't get me wrong, I have no doubt whatsoever that Henderson meant well when he was partaking in all those activities off the pitch, but ultimately, as crude as it may sound, everyone has a price, and Henderson places the importance of a bumper contract over potentially upsetting his new employers due to his belief system. Had he admitted that, I'd actually have a lot more respect for him for calling a spade, but he chose to go down another road, and I'll be breaking apart his arguments in chronological order. He started off by saying that his move to Saudi Arabia can only be seen as a positive, as he'll be able to shed light on certain issues and use the Qatar World Cup as an example of that happening firsthand, but then backtracks by claiming that he doesn't want to upset any religious or cultural elements of society and thus won't be wearing rainbow laces. Now, aside from the obvious contradiction in his argument, Henderson also appears to be unaware of the fact that the version of Qatar he was shown as an England international was always going to be a carefully choreographed and manufactured version that was poles apart from the reality millions have to face every day, and suggesting otherwise is naive at best and complete bollocks at worst. As for his refusal to put on a rainbow armband, there's two things which spring to my mind. Firstly, I've always felt that the entire thing was a bit of a gimmick and can't for the life of me understand why it's viewed as the gold standard of allyship in football. And secondly, wearing it in the UK where there'll be no backlash while choosing not to in a place where their will speaks volumes, and the term virtue signaling all but sums it up. Shortly after, Henderson says neither Klopp nor Liverpool's owners did enough to make him feel wanted, and with the Euros coming up next year, he was left with no choice but to leave the club after 12 years. I feel like Henderson did himself a great disservice with this remark in particular, because anyone who's followed his career trajectory knows he was once the most maligned man in Merseyside, yet got his head down, worked his arse off, and can call himself a Premier League and Champions League winning captain because of it. So this whole thing about not feeling love is a weak argument from someone rightly lauded for their mental resilience and ability to block out outside noise. Additionally, it's ludicrous to suggest that partaking in the Saudi League would increase his chances of making the England squad. If first team minutes and success on the international stage were truly his priority, I'm fairly certain there were mid-table clubs up and down the country who would have been happy to have him around, because I highly doubt Southgate will give two fucks about how he gets on at Al-Ettifaq. Next, Henderson says money has never been his motivation, and that it's all about the project and building something truly special with his former teammate Steven Gerrard. The only words that spring to my mind when I hear a cliche like this is shut the fuck up. Like, for real, PR spin is one thing, but saying shit like this when every man and their dog can see through it is a waste of everyone's time. Like Ruben Neves, just admit you're there for the bag. There's nothing wrong with that, and you'll come across as much less of a twat in the public eye too. Last but not least, he ends by saying he understands the anger towards him, and that he's sorry some people feel that way. Pay close attention to the semantics here. He's not sorry for what he's done, but sorry that some people are having a moan about him. During the interview, he claimed he's not a politician, but he sure as fuck does speak like one, and he can stick that condescending tone up his ass. All he had to do was offer a genuine apology to those he hurt, tell the world that he wanted a payday that would set him and his family up for life, and try and stand up for a cause he supposedly believes in moving forward. Yet he didn't tick even one box box, let alone all three, and his reputation will undoubtedly take a hit because of it. Before I end, I just want to make it clear that I don't see Henderson as some sort of villain. In some ways, it feels unjust that he's getting more criticism right now for previously helping a marginalized community than if he'd remained silent all along, but I suppose that comes with the territory. His entourage have a lot to answer for because the advice they've given him has backfired spectacularly, and I do hope he opens up with honesty at some point in the not too distant future, although I wouldn't be holding my breath on that happening. Contemporary society will have you believe that everything needs to be black or white, but when it comes to Henderson, there's a heck of a lot of grey, and after all the mental gymnastics at play here, it's fair to say that he's a pioneer, just not of the kind that he thought he was. Do let me know where you stand on all of this down below. Call me out if you think I've said anything wrong, and I'll catch you in the next one, folks. Peace.